It's kind of a good time, fun time in our lives because our kids are getting to be a little bit older, still absolutely liabilities when it comes to sitting at the park or sitting at the Old Town Square and having to keep an eye on them at all times because they are not to be trusted. Yes, they will stay around. They probably could find where we are, but during a large event like Tour de Fat, definitely got to keep our eyes on that. But that's what happened this weekend. We had Tour de Fat. It's like a full day parade festival. We went downtown. We were actually going to go to Anderson Farms in Erie, Mead, Colorado. And we've gone there a couple of times to pick sunflowers, and it's been an enjoyable experience. But luckily, because my wife never checks her mail or email, which is the life that I want to live. If I get to the point where I don't check my email for like 5 days, sign me up. But she coincidentally was checking her email on the way to Anderson Farms, and it was canceled. So we were kind of like, well, what should we do? And we decided to actually take the public transportation, the max transit system, and ride downtown, avoid, the traffic and parking issues and all of the commotion that is bikers all over the place. And it was a great little experience. Our kids loved it. They had fun. They were running all over the place in the bus. And then we got there and it was a packed house, not overly crowded by any means, but bikes everywhere. And I do know one thing, if you're at the Tour de Fat, it is definitely a place where thieves are on the lookout for good bikes. And there's a couple Reddit threads where you'd unfortunately see people who would have their bikes be stolen or lost. And that's really not found out till the next day. Whether they didn't ride their bike home and got an Uber or whatever the reason. But it was nice when I was there at Old Town Square. There was a police officer who's a buddy of mine, comes up and we start talking. And I asked him, this was probably about 3:30 or maybe 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. So not necessarily too crazy late, but definitely when the parade starts at like 9:30 and New Belgium opens up at 11, by 2:30 or 3, people can absolutely have hung one on. And I asked him, I said, how's the activity been? You guys staying safe? And he said, yeah, the worst thing we've had to do today is, what's up, Kevin? The worst thing we've had to do today is kick somebody out of a handicap spot. They were posting up to get their band or their music group, whatever, playing there. So they had to kick them out of the handicap spot. But otherwise, he said it's been all quiet. And I said, that's probably a pretty good day if that's the worst thing that happened on New West Fest. So definitely something worth checking out on an annual basis. And if you can, ride your bike down there or take the max transit. It was awesome. And my wife goes, why don't we do this more often? And I was like, we probably should. Our house is only about a mile and a half away from the South Transit station. Parked there, no issues, jumped on the bus. We were down there 20-25 minutes, no problems. Let's see here. City of Fort Collins receives $21 million in damages and utility billing lawsuit. This has been going on for a few years. And it's we had a contract with a company that was essentially going to optimize some of our utility billing. And some of our city council members definitely bring that up when we are kind of on the forefront, the vanguard of trying new things. And this was an example of how it can go wrong. Fortunately, it sounds like we were made whole, actually received the $21 million on August 12th. So that money will go back into our system. But it was a lot of lawsuits, attorneys, judges, timing. And so unfortunately, it didn't work out. I think there was going to be a lot of automation with our billing and a lot of promises that weren't necessarily met, optimizations. So unfortunately that didn't work out, but a good thing is that Fort Collins fought it and ended up coming on the winning side, got $21 million. I didn't know this was happening, but I'm so excited. And I feel just grateful because my daughter is, she's just turning, she's about 7.5, going to turn 8 early next year. And she did flag football for the first time this last fall or spring and loved it. She really enjoyed the heck out of it. And Poudre School District actually is having their first inaugural season and had their first game on August 23rd of a female flag football team, which is pretty darn cool. And there's actually a fair amount of participants. I think there's 1,900 participants across Colorado, over 63 schools. And just really pretty sweet. Now, I didn't know that the Fossil Ridge High School girl won the 100-meter dash at state last year, but she's on the team. They won their first game 7-6. And apparently it's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States at both the high school and collegiate level for women. And I'm like, man, that is perfect timing. My daughter, she's fast. She whether she does it or not, I think it's just cool to have that opportunity for her. Boys volleyball is another example of where there was kind of a combination of schools, but now because there's been so many participants, they broke it up into, I believe, Pooter and Fossil Ridge. And I think if you're like at Fort Collins High School or Rocky, you can compete with or be on their teams. But right now we have the Pooter School District Stars. It's a girls flag football team. So if your girl is in high school, I think the tryouts and all that kind of stuff have already passed this year, but be on the lookout for it next year. I bet you camps are going to start happening and all that good stuff. So pretty cool. We didn't go this Saturday because, like I said, we were going to go to Anderson Farms, and then we ended up going to New Belgium downtown. But they played Saturday afternoon, and they have a pretty decent schedule. It looks like their next game at home is going to be against Mountain View on September 10th. They have a tournament next Saturday, a game at Eagle Ridge Academy the following Saturday, and then September 10th, they'll be playing Mountain View. And I believe Fort Collins High School is their home field. So if that's something that you're interested in, which I think, we are, and I want to have my daughter go and watch these girls play flag football and, be able to see like, hey, I can do that. So that's pretty darn cool. Jumping into some housing apartments, specifics about Northern Colorado, Fort Collins, there is a 160 apartment unit complex that's passed a historic review. There's still a third phase they've got to get past. They've been going through this the development review phase since 2024 process, But that river district and along Linden and Willow just continues to get built out. And a friend of mine who was on the podcast, Tell Us Outdoors, I've got to imagine he's pretty excited about that because he is right there and he's kind of on the forefront next to Hello Brewery, which I still haven't been. But my buddy Chris yesterday asked if I wanted to join and wasn't able to yesterday. But the River District, which is kind of like connecting downtown Fort Collins, Old Town, north to this River District. So it's really becoming this really cool, over the next 20 years, that's just going to be an awesome, I bet you there's going to be some cool walkways, connectivity, and lots of development in that area. But that is past a hurdle and moving forward. Speaking of which, there was actually 82 residents were displaced from their home this last Saturday on Jefferson Street when a apartment fire broke out. Unfortunately, I've managed a complex that had an apartment fire. Fortunately, it only impacted, I think it was 6 units, but the initial fire displaced 12 to 20 units, and you got to imagine about 2 people per unit. So that was super scary. Red Cross I will say it was a really eye-opening experience because we had like Red Cross come right away. I will say if you're in that situation, you got to be careful because you have like restoration companies readily, like they are just licking their chops because they're like, how can I get this? This is money, easy money. So you got to be a little bit careful on that. But ultimately, there's a lot of cool processes in place, City of Fort Collins, then the rebuild process. But it's unfortunate for these residents because their lives are being turned upside down and they're going to get some assistance and help. But regardless, that is a challenging time for them. So 82 residents were displaced from a seemingly kitchen fire is what it sounds like. And then Colorado State University finished their 12-story, $15 million renovation on Durwood. So Durwood and Westfall, kind of their 2 towers at CSU, have been fully renovated. They were originally built in the 60s, I believe it was. But it's interesting about how many millions of dollars CSU is going to be pouring into the renovation, expansion, and growth of their current dorms because it's cheaper to do that than it is to build new, apparently. But one of the dorms that are going to be renovated is Newsom, and that was where I live. So excited to hear that. But lots of expansion and growth and renovation, remodeling happening at CSU. Outside of Fort Collins, I think this is pretty interesting. You know, like one of the things that we've talked about is like the slowing growth of Fort Collins as far as the population, but really the continued strong growth of Northern Colorado. And that's because, well, you got places like Eaton and Wellington that are doing, you know, cool things. And specifically, Eaton is going to be putting on the ballot this November of whether or not they want to build out a downtown development authority, which gives opportunity to receive taxes from the community specifically for downtown projects and renovations. And then they can help businesses with grants and landscaping, architectural facades, things of that nature. I can tell you that the Fort Collins Downtown Development Authority was paramount. We did have Matt Robinall, the director of the DDA, on our podcast and talked about how Old Town Fort Collins almost didn't exist as we see it today because, well, it was a blight. They were considering putting a highway through it. And there was a group of individuals that got together, built a board, said, no, let's make this a beautiful place. And that was really the kickstart of Old Town Fort Collins. So, you know, Eaton's a much, much smaller area, but it's kind of cool. We went there for our kids' track and field, super awesome high school. So it's one of those areas that are growing close enough to Fort Collins, you know, 15, 25 minutes away, depending. But far enough away, you still get some pretty decent pricing as far as housing goes. And there could be a lot of growth, and their downtown could be something pretty cool. I think I remember playing golf in Eaton when I was like 10 or 11 with my grandpa, and it was a cool golf course. So Eaton making some headway there with the this November having the DDA being on the ballot. From there, Wellington also, they've got 3 major projects being proposed and 95, I think, in the works of getting done, not just being proposed. A 95,000 square foot commercial business center, a 50,000 square foot high-end manufacturing company, and a 300 acre, I think it was 300 acre. Yeah. 300 acre master plan community by Sage Homes, a local builder. And one of the biggest hurdles that Wellington has had over the last decade is infrastructure, specifically stormwater, but they've got those sorted out. And so they kind of put the pedal back to the metal in Wellington as far as growth goes. And those are 3 big projects that are happening. All righty. Now jumping into our city council meeting, it's interesting because when I was preparing for this weekly live, I started to build out everything as far as like what I wanted to talk about, articles, specifics. And there was actually a tax that I didn't even know was going to be on the ballot. But I was like, is that a 4th tax that's going to be on City of Fort Collins ballot? And in fact, yes, it is. So we'll go through what those 4 taxes are. 2 of them are City of Fort Collins specific, and 2 of them are Larimer County specific. So if you are in Larimer County, you'll at least get a vote on 2 of those. If you're in Fort Collins, you'll be voting on all 4 of those. But that being said, I'm going to share my screen. So if you're watching on Instagram, feel free to jump over, look at our YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn is where this is being streamed right now. And then we'll get rocking and rolling. Okay. All right. So the consent calendar passed 7-0. Part of the consent calendar is it just it's kind of one of those, if it's not an issue or like something where the City of Fort Collins residents have made it to become an issue, it just goes on to consent calendar. But there's some pretty big items that go on there. And so this week there was definitely some that I wanted to touch base on, like this LeMay waterline project. We've had 7 leaks this year between April and June. And you can see right here, this is like, this is what I drive on to go into like from south to north. This is LeMay Avenue. This is Harmony, I believe, right here. And so it's a pretty, like we had 4 right here, 3 right here, and they're going to replace that entire line. It's going to be about a $3 million project to do the entire line. And it's an older line. What's interesting is like how much, one thing that I thought was really interesting is just how much reserves our water fund has. It's wild to think we have $80 million in funds, 50 million of which were already appropriated. We have a minimum reserve policy of $7 million. And so we have 26 available funds. of which we're going to take 3 million from. So we'll still have 22 million that are unaccounted for, can be used for other things, but that's going to be a headache and an annoyance for that water line to be replaced along LeMay. I can only imagine. That means we're either going to Timberline or College Avenue to get south to north or north to south. Let's see here. Oh, shoot. I didn't put the slide number. We'll get there. Here we go. This Harmony crossing right here, this is the planned underpass. This siphon overpass, I believe, is going to be finished being built here shortly, which is really pretty cool. Connecting, you've got Hanson Farm right here. You've got the Lennar new build being built right here. And this is going to be connecting onto the power trail. But then we're going to have this proposed power trail line that connects underneath Harmony Road, and it received $1.5 million to begin really this process. The project, it looks like, isn't going to really start until like late next year, early 2027. So I'd have to imagine this is like going to be a 2028 project, which isn't a bad thing, because like right here, if you can kind of see, I'll zoom in. It's the Twin Silo Park right here. And this is going to be the $100 million Southeast Community Center that's being built. So if it is in fact built by 2028, which I think it could be, it's going to take you right basically here. You can get to this community center on a bike from a power trail and be on the roads for very little time, which is pretty darn cool. Let's see here. Battery storage, number 17. The Platte River Power Authority, that's PRPA, is proposing a battery storage facility on Overland, on Overland. And essentially what they're trying to do is build this out in preparation for solar to integrate with our grid, to have battery storage for clean energy that we produce. So City of Fort Collins, I know a lot of people weren't excited about Rawhide number 2, which is a natural gas powered facility, power generating facility being built way out north, kind of by the landfill near the Wellington area. And people were really not super excited about that, because they're like, we want clean energy. We want to get away from coal and gas and, move more towards electric. And listening to the director, or I believe it's the director of the Platte River Power Authority, he said, I totally agree. And we're all on board to going clean energy, but the number one thing that we have to have is reliability. And we're just not there yet. But this is a step that shows, hey, we might not be there yet, but we're taking steps to try and get there. So 27,000 square foot facility. And I thought, and that's kind of the last page that I want to go on specifically that I want to show, but let me just make sure. 455. We'll jump here and I'll get there shortly. I'm going to stop share. All righty. A couple other things on our consent calendar was the door-to-door solicitation. So right now, apparently, all you have to do to be a door-to-door salesperson in Fort Collins, and we have, I swear, and I don't get upset about it because I'm in sales, but we have a no solicitor sign on our house, and we still get door-to-door salesmen every now and again. But apparently, there is a badge that you have to get from the City of Fort Collins as it currently stands that allows you to do door-to-door sales or door-to-door solicitation. But there is an ordinance that's changing that says the company that is doing door-to-door sales has to have a permit for that, and then they take full responsibility for each person underneath their purview, which, it doesn't mean that door-to-door sales people are going away. It just means a little bit more protection of who's doing door-to-door sales and the process and safety and things of that nature. Because like I said, I've got a no solicitor sign on mine, and we still get door-to-door salespeople every now and again. Not often, but every now and again. And then finally, there was there was some funds being allocated to the airport, which is a joint partnership now essentially between Fort Collins and Loveland. There's a $16 million grant from the FAA that we're getting. So we have to basically cover the other $3 million for the widening of the airport. And this is going to start construction in 2026, which will allow for larger planes to land and come into the Fort Collins Loveland Airport, which again, we had a podcast with the director, airport director on, and he was excited about those, the tower, airport, the widening of the airport, and then the terminal that was being built. So the terminal has been built. It's a world-class facility. The widening of the air runway is happening, and I don't know where we stand on the tower, but those are kind of the three big items for us to have commercial airlines again in Northern Colorado. Then finally, the items up for discussion were the CSU Hughes draft language. I will show that here in a second. The community capital improvement tax and the in perpetuity natural areas quarter-cent sales tax. So let me jump in. Oh, one thing that they're going to have this year, which is unique, on national elections, we always send out the Blue Book. And we've had friends and clients that have moved here from different areas all over the place, and they've just raved about how cool and great the Blue Book is, how easily it is to consume. And there is going to be a Blue Book for this local election, but it will just be online, is my understanding. So make sure to be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions on that, I can specifically, provide a link when that comes out, but they are finalizing that right now. And it's a kind of a pros and cons. If you vote for this, here's what you're voting for. If you don't vote for it, here's what you're voting for. So that should be coming out. That is pretty cool. One other thing that I thought was interesting, just not anecdotally, but they were talking about, there was some public comment about mosquito spraying, and Fort Collins has a $400,000 a year budget for mosquito spraying. Now, Councilmember Kelly Olson was not a fan of that. Mayor Jenny Arndt was. She actually lived in Mozambique for 6 years and was like, this is so cool. It protects us, protects the area. And anyways, $400,000 on mosquito spraying is our annual budget. All righty. Let me share my screen again with you guys. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask away. I will get to your comments and questions as quickly as I can. All righty. Here is the Hughes draft language. Okay, so there's going to be, this is really important to know. I learned quite a bit myself on this. There's going to be, more than likely, because this has to go through second reading, which it seems like it's going to pass on second reading, and then it's going to be referred to the ballot. So there's going to actually be 2 ballot initiatives for how we are going to use the Hughes land. There is going to be the city council ordinance that's been passed and then voted on by the citizens. And then there's going to be a petition, a citizens petition ordinance on there as well that offers you a completely different use of Hughes land, which is kind of confusing. I was like, okay, well, how is this going to work? But ultimately, the thing to know about that is there's going to be this multi-use, which let's look at this real quick. This is going to be the multi-use ordinance language. Connective trail system throughout the site. Bike park features not to exceed 35 acres. And that doesn't include parking lots, bathrooms, trails, a few other things. So that's just purely bike park acreage. Community gathering space available. Any necessary bathrooms, facilities, shade structures, trash collections. Let's see here. Existing uses such as the disc golf course and sledding hill may continue. Then they have for environmental wildlife rehabilitation and conservation is what Kelly Olson wanted on there, 30 acres. And then there's going to be some natural area and land, stormwater, things of that nature. So that's going to be the multi-use opportunity for Hughes. And then there's going to be the citizens-led petition that just keeps Hughes as natural area. I am absolutely going to 100% vote for the multi-use. I feel like actually one of the things I'm going to talk about here shortly is there's a quarter-cent sales tax that helps Fort Collins fund, purchase, and maintain natural areas. And we are very intentional about it. And I absolutely love it. I think it's fundamental to what Fort Collins is. But I also think that on that west side of town, that 160 acres, it's just kind of been dead since Hughes Stadium went away and moved to on campus. And I think an opportunity like this could bring in revenue for the city on the bike park, could bring opportunities for the wildlife rehabilitation, disc golf, fun, entertainment. I just think that this 164 acres is a rare opportunity. And we have thousands of acres of natural and open space throughout Fort Collins and Larimer County. And this is something that's kind of like in the heart of Fort Collins that I just don't feel like we should let go, which might be controversial, but that's where my heart lands. Is I think using this as a multi-use facility is the right way to go, personally speaking. I think that's it on that one. Oh, one thing that to know too. Okay, so Susan Gutowski actually voted against this. It was a 6-1 vote saying, yes, let's keep this as it is and then probably refer it to the ballot. But she said there was a supermajority that was voted on and bike parks never were a part of that. And there seems to be a little bit of confusion, misunderstanding that actually bike parks were a part of 19 out of the 20 supermajority votes for the multi-use language. But when it was specifically outlined, it fell a little bit lower. So I don't necessarily, don't necessarily agree with Council Member Gutowski on that one. I think it could have been confusing. There were 20 people involved with the Civic Assembly, and it was the first time Fort Collins has ever used that. And so we'll see if it ultimately pans out to be successful in the sense of it going to the ballot and then passing. So, and the last thing to know is, there's going to be those 2 ballot initiatives, the city council referred ballot initiative and the citizens petition ballot initiative. And they're both going to ask the same thing of like, what do you want to do with Hughes? This is going to give you the multi-use land opportunity. And this is going to give you the keep it natural areas. The one with the most affirmative votes will be what wins. So it doesn't necessarily matter if one passes and one doesn't. If they both pass, then it's going to be the one with the most affirmative votes. So there'll definitely be some campaigning and opportunities for people to get what they want to be seen done. Okay, let's go ahead to 495. This is the community capital improvement project. I think it's important to know this tax has been going on since the 70s, and they renew it every 10 or so years. It's a quarter-cent sales tax, so every $100 you spend, 25 cents of it goes to this community capital improvement project, which is what it's called now, community capital improvement program, excuse me. They're going to raise $110 million over 10 years, but they've only budgeted $102 million to try to account for inflation and things of that nature. Here are some of the biggest projects they've got going on. One of the things that they've, let's see here. Bike park. Yeah, community. One of the things that even if the bike park doesn't go at Hughes, that's one thing to know too, is it's already in and it's been decided upon, especially if this passes, that there is going to be a bike park in Fort Collins. It just hasn't been found where. So that's, if your argument is we have to have a bike park and it has to go at Hughes, okay, that's one thing. But if we have to have a bike park, I don't care where it goes. Well, then you might consider what you want to vote for on the Hughes Stadium, because we are going to fund a $5 million bike park somewhere in Fort Collins. And the city of Fort Collins city staff has pinpointed different areas. They haven't let it be known to the public yet, because there's private land ownership and things of that nature that they've got to kind of maneuver around. But this is going to be a quarter-cent sales tax that is going to sunset in 2035. And this is up for renewal. This is kind of a breakdown of how the dollars will be spent. And this kind of, it really gets detailed. I actually just released a blog a lot of information from these slides, but a little bit more easily to read. So that is on my website if you guys are interested in reading that. Finally, there was another tax that is going to be a renewal, but it was a citizen-led petition to get it on this year's ballot to try and get this quarter-cent sales tax to go in forever. And I will say there was a couple of people, city council people, that were not excited about the idea of a forever tax. But that's what this petition will be voting on, is a 25-cent sales tax that will never sunset. There will be some changes in how they can be used in like 2061, saying we want to reduce the annual revenue that must be spent on land conservation activities and move that to more of an operation side, suggesting that by that time we'll have enough land or whatever. I'm not sure. But this right now expires December 31st, 2030. So I have to imagine the reason why this is on as a citizen petition, and they had 9,000 some odd signatures for this. So it was a pretty supported petition. But my guess is Council Member Kelly Olson and his wife are very strong proponents of natural areas, and he is retiring from city council. And this is an opportunity for him on his last kind of hurrah, so to speak, to get this in forever. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing by any means. It's just he has right now a platform and an ability to push this. And so this will be an opportunity for you to vote on this November to essentially get this tax for without ever an expiration date. Let's see here. Yeah, here's the most important thing. Without expiration. So this is a quarter-cent sales tax forever. And like I said earlier on in the show, I knew these I knew the renewal tax was going for the Community Capital Improvement Program, as well as the 15-cent sales tax that Larimer County was pushing for its roads and infrastructure, which did not pass in a couple of years ago. A year ago, 2024, that did not pass. So they just put it back on the ballot. But there's actually another tax on top of that. So there are 4 taxes, 2 renewals and 2 new, that those in Fort Collins will be voting for. And this is kind of where, I don't know. For me personally, yes, on Community Capital Improvement Program, I think that's vital. The programs that they're wanting to build out, the facilities, all that kind of stuff, super excited about that. I'm probably a yes on the transportation infrastructure sales tax. I've talked about it time and time again. I think not having potholes in and around your county is just a reflection of how that county and city and municipality are ran. City of Fort Collins, part of that Community Capital Improvement Project, some of the monies goes towards roads and infrastructures, intersections, and I personally believe Fort Collins is gorgeous. We just repaved Harmony Road, and it's beautiful when you drive in on Harmony Road. That being said, I think Larimer County does need that. So I'm a yes on the transportation infrastructure sales tax of a 15 cents per 15-cent sales tax, and a yes on the renewal of the Community Capital Improvement. I don't like a forever tax. Probably off the top, it's going to expire in 2030. I don't know. That's still a few years out. I think there's a reason why things sunset, and even if it's like Community Capital Improvement Project, where it sunsets every 10 years, but it's been going since the 70s, and we vote on it each year. I think it's important for the citizens to be able to have that option to decide where their dollars are going and not be decided upon, forever. So I'm probably a no on that one, honestly. And then this last one is a quarter-cent early childhood care and education sales tax. Oh, is it selfish of me? Because so this is for early childhood, and my kiddo has 2 years left of preschool. So it wouldn't necessarily benefit me financially. We were fortunate that we didn't have the financial struggles to be able to put our kids through preschool. I understand how expensive that can be. And like my sister, who she had 2 kiddos go through, and when her second kiddo was done with preschool, she felt like she got a raise because of how much money she was saving on a monthly basis. So I do think that is extremely important. I do also understand that kids that go to preschool tend to do much better throughout school. But again, it's kind of just like this conversation of when's enough. And if all 4 of these pass, that would be an additional. So we already have the community capital improvement tax. Let me just, I did not have it last week. $8.05%. There we go. So right now, City of Fort Collins tax is at 8.05% for everything, Larimer County, city, state of Colorado, all that good stuff. If the 2 that are renewing pass, and again, the one that's renewing that's on the ballot doesn't expire 2030. It's just that they're trying to get this to be in perpetuity forever. Those don't impact the 8.05% sales tax. But if you're in Fort Collins and you vote yes on the 2 new taxes, that would be 40-cent sales tax. So it would increase our city sales tax from 8.05% to 8.45%. And we were just because we just passed a half-cent sales tax in 2024, maybe 2023 actually. I think it might be 2023. Yeah, we passed in 2023 that began in 2024 for parks, climate, and transportation. So that was, we used to be at 7.65%. So like, it's kind of one of those things where you have to start really making hard decisions because I just don't know, it's all meaning well ideas, and there are people that need help, but there's a point where it's like, what is City of Fort Collins sales tax? It went from 7.65% to 8.45% in 2 years. That's significant. Now there are items that are kind of, removed from this, what's being taxed. But anyways, those are going to be 4 taxes that are going to be on the ballot this year that you're going to have to make a hard decision on. I'm not decided on number 2. I'm a yes on the renewal of the community capital improvement. I'm a no, as of right now, on the natural area tax extension forever. I like it. Let's just have it sunset every 10 years. Then I am a yes on Larimer County transportation infrastructure sales tax, and I am an undecided on early childhood care and education sales. So I would love to know where you guys stand. Let me know. Now, to finish up the show, some things to do this weekend, whatever. Let me see here. Y'all going to be able to handle the potential influx of Forest Service people? That's a great question, Matthew. I know we're going to be one of like 3 hubs in Fort Collins. I'm glad that we're not losing the people. Let's just put it that way. I'm glad that Fort Collins isn't losing those jobs and instead is becoming a hub. So I guess that's a positive problem that we'll have to figure out. Back to things to do this weekend. CSU football starts. I'm not a huge football fan. I am not a football fan. I enjoy watching, but I've kind of found myself like excited for this year's football season, both NFL and college, for whatever reason. I don't know. I just am. That starts this week and weekend. CSU at Washington. One of the bummer things, and this will be, actually Washington's part of the Big Ten now, but when we become part of the Pac-12, the one bummer thing is we're probably going to have games later at night. And this one specifically is going to start at 9 p.m. and you can watch it on the Big Ten Network. Food truck rallies. Hey, listen, we're end of August. I think there's a couple more weeks left of food trucks. So make sure to get out there, enjoy this good weather, because before we know it, fall is going to be here, winter, and we're going to be itching for spring and summer food trucks to come back. So get out, support both at City Park and Fossil Creek Park. There's going to be a car show at Peculiar Ales on Saturday from 2 to 6 p.m. And then just kind of, I thought these were kind of fun. I'm going to include these in our newsletter, which if you're not a part of our newsletter, feel free to send me an email and I'll get you on that list. But every week there's karaoke at the Lyric, trivia night at Gilded Goat, amongst other places, bingo at Sliced Pizza, amongst other places. There's comedy, new material night at the Comedy Fort, amongst other places where there's comedy open mics. And then tours. I just put a Facebook post that I said, hey, do yourself a favor if you're in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, and go tour Morning Fresh Dairy. It was awesome, super affordable, fun, great story, good company. But also you can New Belgium Brewery Tour, Odell's, Vortic Watches, and a Fort Collins Ghost Tour. So those are just some things that you can do on a weekly basis. On top of that, the Lincoln Center is going to have our 2025 Art in Public Places artists from August 29th to October 17th. You can go see some of the art in public places that we've had and some of the artists and what they're doing. And then finally, there is the Fort Collins Artisan Fair, August 30th on Linden Street. And this is going to be, just kind of like handmade, upcycled, handcrafted type of goods. And that is this August 30th. And I don't have times, unfortunately. So I'm sorry I don't have times on that, but those are things that you can do this weekend. I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys ever have any questions or comments or anything like that, make sure to comment below. And I'd be happy to, if you're watching this on rerun, answer those questions or comments. And if you're watching this live, appreciate you guys watching and engaging. Makes my time on here more enjoyable, and all the time and hours spent preparing this feel that much more important and relevant. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.